Welcome to the Patel Kumar Show, episode 10. I am Shivam Patel, coming to you live from San Antonio, Texas, and my co-host, Mr. Kumar, coming to you live from Mumbai, India. The finals are here, ladies and gentlemen. This is the moment that we've all been waiting for. We started with 22 teams in the bubble, and now we're down to the last two teams standing. The Miami Heat and the Los Angeles Lakers. And the Lakers had a dominating victory in game one last night. Mr. Kumar, I could see, is very happy and very joyful. So welcome, Mr. Kumar.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. And of course, you guessed it right. I should be one of the happiest persons after game one. By the way, welcome everyone from Mumbai. My name is Vinod Muthukumar, and I am the wiser half of Patel and Kumar. And welcome back to the show, episode 10. Can get more exciting than this. The finals after game one. You can see the excitement in me. And Mr. Patel reluctantly, of course, chose the Lakers to win this series. But that's a smart choice. So I think we're going to get right into it before we're going to discuss game one before we get on to the the NBA Finals matchup discussion. We're going to have a great NBA storyline section with discussing about Doc Rivers. We're going to discuss if LeBron becomes a GOAT, if he wins a championship this season. And of course, we will move on to the Indian Tadka section where we'll have more LeBron-centric topics. So, Mr. Patel, how do you feel after game one?
Oh, man. So, Mr. Kumar, I picked the Lakers to win the series with my head, but my heart is still picking the Heat, but it doesn't look too good for the Heat right now. Seems like they're going to be sent home early without a championship. And LeBron, that's a very telling graphic because LeBron is that much closer to getting his fourth NBA championship with three different teams. So kudos to LeBron and the Lakers for a dominating victory last night. And that's where we're going to start talking about game one. And Mr. Kumar, there's not really much to talk about game one. It was just a complete Lakers annihilation. It's your team, your man. I'll let you have the first thoughts about what you saw last night in game one.
Well, let me tell you, I was pretty nervous for the first 5 or 6 minutes because the Miami Heat were dominating the game. They had gone on to a 13-point lead. And I was thinking, man, this is going to be one of those, game one losses that usually LeBron has. And, once they came out of that timeout, I think KCP had two, threes. And then I think it was Alec Caruso who had a three from the corner. And they cut back that lead. And, after that, I think it just deflated the Miami Heat. Lakers just shot lights out in the first half. 64% from three, 11 of 17. I think that's a record for the Lakers. And, of course, Anthony Davis and LeBron James didn't have a really dominating game today. But after that second quarter, I think the game was pretty much done. I think it overwhelmed a team like the Miami Heat.
It did, and you could just tell when the Lakers really became focused and ramped up the pressure that the Heat were kind of like a little bit scared and a little bit, their youth showed. And Mr. Kumar, I was very impressed with the Lakers defense. Before until the third quarter, basically when the game was over, they held the Heat to 38% field goal percentage. That's incredible. And the Lakers really out-rebounded the Heat 54-36 on the boards. The Heat just had no chance, outside of Bam Adebayo. And the Heat were just basically too small. And the Lakers' swarming defense was very impressive. When the Heat, they tried their ball movement, but the Lakers were just swarming like a bunch of bees all over. The rotations were just excellent. Their on-ball defense was on point. Even if the Heat did get to the rim or shoot a jump shot, it was contested. It was a tough shot. So I think this all started with the Lakers defense. And I think that allowed them to, carry that to their offense because their role players with Alex Caruso, Kyle Kuzma, Marcus Morris, Danny Green, all played well. And I think that's contributing to them playing really good defense.
Absolutely. I think one of the key problems for the Miami Heat was like Bam Adebayo got into foul trouble right in the first quarter. So he had to pretty much sit out. And then, of course, there were, those, freak injuries for Jimmy Butler. He twisted his ankle. And then Goran Dickman, he's been diagnosed with a plantar fascia injury, and it doesn't look really good for Miami Heat if Dragic doesn't play, because he was a key contributor for the Miami Heat team, especially in that series, against Boston. And it would be a huge setback for somebody like for Miami, because if he doesn't play, he was a floor leader, and I think he has had the best production in terms of the season that he was having with the Miami Heat. So I think it was a combination of a lot of stuff. I think the Lakers played really excellent basketball in the first half, and everything was pretty much going in. There was dominance from Anthony Davis, and even though Dwight Howard didn't really score too much, but he had those. He was crashing the boards, man. It was tough for a team like Miami Heat to out rebound, Anthony Davis and Dwight Howard. He had a couple of nice assists to Anthony Davis right under the rim, and so it was a lot of a combination of factors that really put the Miami Heat away. Looking at the first game, I think the Miami Heat are under a lot of trouble. I think they'll have to make huge adjustments, and they have to pretty much shoot like the Lakers in game two if they really need to come back into the series. If Lakers dominate in game two, I think this series is pretty much over, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Lakers sweep the Miami Heat.
Mr. Kumar, I said before the series that I feel like the Heat have to win these first two games, get some type of momentum on the Lakers. They cannot go down 0-2 and expect to come back on the Los Angeles Lakers. This is not the Celtics. This is not the Bucks. This is not the Pacers. This is the Los Angeles Lakers, one of the best teams in the NBA. But Mr. Kumar, back to the Lakers defense, I was really impressed with their switching, because even though they did on the Butler Bam pick and roll, because even when they did switch, LeBron and AD are so long that they were still able to contest the shots, and that completely took the Heat out about what they want to do. Because against the Celtics, Mr. Kumar, they couldn't even stop that pick and roll. And I think they're going to need someone to step up. With Goran Dragic most likely being out, and that is Kendrick Nunn. So let's see if he's up for that challenge. But on the offensive end on the floor, Mr. Kumar, LeBron was literally looking to which players to take advantage of. He was doing on purpose the pick and roll of Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, and even Goran Dragic before he went out of the game, and to get that switch. And LeBron just took them to the basket. It was just no chance at all. It was completely over. And I loved how the Lakers were pounding the ball in the paint with LeBron and AD. And I think that he just got overwhelmed and completely outmatched in game one.
Absolutely, and I think Kendrick Nunn and Kelly Olynyk are probably going to get more minutes in this particular series. They didn't have, too many opportunities in the series against Boston because it was a very short lineup for Miami. And Kendrick Nunn, of course, maybe you could say that he played in garbage time because the lead was almost like 32 points, but he still came out and scored 15 points in 15 minutes. And he just needs to build that confidence in Coach Spoelstra if he can come back into that lineup. And maybe with Dragic, injured, maybe he gets that opportunity. But I think, all in all, I think Lakers did not play that well in the second half. Maybe they just put off that, pedal off that gas. But, that's the story. But I think they took it easy. And LeBron, of course, was a little bit annoyed at some of the defensive lapses in that fourth quarter, and then he took it upon himself, to score. So anyway, so let's move on, and I think just take a look at the road to the finals for both these teams. Mr. Patel, do you want to recap the East for me, please?
Oh, yes, for sure. So in the Eastern Conference, for the Heat, they ended up beating the Indiana Pacers 4-0 sweep. The Pacers did have Domantas Sabonis, and Victor Oladipo was kind of hobbling, but still a great win, series win against a tough Pacers team. And the second round came at a complete shock, Mr. Kumar. Everybody projected the Bucks to make it to the finals and come out of the East. The Heat had the gentleman's sweep on them and completely took Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Milwaukee Bucks out of the game and beat them in 5 games. And in the conference finals, they were again the underdogs against a young, up-and-coming Boston Celtics team, but the Heat again took care of business. Their zone overwhelmed the Boston Celtics. The Celtics didn't make enough adjustments, and the Heat had a lot of balanced scoring that allowed them to get that 4-2 victory against the Boston Celtics and be in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, and moving on to the West, I think the Lakers were touted as probably having the most difficult path to the finals, but then it all changed after their victories against Portland in the first round and Houston in the second round, both gentlemen sweeps. I really thought that Denver would probably give a little bit of a better fight to the Lakers, but I mean, I think we both of us picked probably Denver getting maybe 2 games and the Lakers winning in 6, but that was not the case. LeBron and AD didn't give that opportunity to the Denver Nuggets, but it's a young team, and of course another gentleman sweep there 4-1, and they're in the finals, and as you can see, they're leading 1-0 in the finals. So a good start for the Lakers. Just 3 more wins to go, my man. Just 3 more.
Oh, Mr. Kumar, you and the Lakers fans in India are all counting down. 3 more to go. Y'all are looking very good and on the way to the championship. So, Mr. Kumar, coming into the show, I was really hoping I was able to wear the T-shirts of some of my favorite teams, but that completely failed. Starting with the Los Angeles Clippers, I don't need to rehash it. Everybody knows what happened to them. They completely collapsed, and they're out. And maybe next year, Clippers, we'll see. And I was hoping everybody knows who watched the show at the beginning, the Toronto Raptors were my pick to come out of the Eastern Conference and had a lot of hope for the defending champions, but they lost to the Boston Celtics. So bye-bye, Toronto Raptors. And in my last hope, I was clinging on to the Boston Celtics, hoping this young team with Jason Tatum, Kemba Walker, and company can come up and make it to the NBA Finals and have that Celtics-Lakers rivalry, that the teams with the most championships, but the Celtics completely failed me, and they're also out. So see ya, Boston Celtics. So here I am right now wearing normal clothes.
Yeah, Mr. Patel, I told you I was the wiser one. I was the wiser one of the Patel and Kumar. All you need to do was buy one single jersey, and that's the Laker jersey, and you would have been far better off. And now you have all these jerseys, and maybe you won't even get the value on eBay if you go and sell them, especially the Clippers, because they choked big time.
Oh, Mr. Kumar, Jason Tatum's going to be a star. I have the Raptors. All I got to tell you is I'm all ready for next season, for next NBA season. I'll have all the gear ready, and hopefully one of those teams can come up on top. But Mr. Kumar, being in San Antonio, the Lakers are our biggest rival. You can't wear a Lakers jersey or be a Lakers fan if you're a hardcore Spurs fan like me, Mr. Kumar.
That's why I'm telling you, prepare yourself for next season and buy the Laker jersey right now.
Oh man, maybe if they win the championship, that's a possibility, Mr. Kumar. So now, moving on. So let's talk more about the Heat and Lakers series going forward. So, Mr. Kumar, what adjustments do you see that the Heat need to make in order for this to be a more competitive series, if any?
I think the biggest adjustment is, you never know whether the Lakers are going to shoot, from the 3 as strong as they did in today's game. I think you still can take a chance on the Lakers in terms of their, outside shooting. And of course, I mean, LeBron and AD are going to dominate, and they're going to get anywhere between 60 to 70 points between the two of them. But it's all about stopping those role players and how are you going to make them, adjust and make it difficult for those guys. Of course, Danny Green. We wish Danny Green was, shooting like this since the start of the season, and he finally got his groove back. We just need to see if he is going to be consistent. And it's all about, out rebounding. I mean, how are you going to stop AD and Dwight Howard and LeBron James inside that paint? And I know, like, the Heat would probably deploy the zone defense more often, but I think Lakers themselves have played zone defense at certain times, so
Exactly.
it's not going to be that easy. Unlike the series against Boston. So I think it's a very difficult choice for Coach Polstra. It's a young team. Height disadvantage is a major concern. And then, of course, Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo both have to be, pretty much equal to LeBron and AD if they need to win this series.
I think that's very true, Mr. Kumar. And Mr. Kumar, Jimmy Butler's and the Heat they're not going to grow 6 inches overnight before game two. So they're always going to be small. So I think that they're just going to have to just find ways to counteract the Lakers' height advantage. Play some bigs. Kelly Olynyk, Myers Leonard may need to get some minutes in there just for defensive rebounding and toughness. And they're going to live with the Lakers shooting threes with the Danny Greens, the KCPs. Mr. Kumar, what is it about Danny Green in the NBA Finals? As a Spurs fan in 2014, Danny Green made a record amount of threes. Somehow, when the lights shine brightest in the NBA Finals, Danny Green steps up. But if Bam Adebayo is healthy enough to play in Game 2, which it looks like he is, I think, Mr. Kumar, they need to start him on AD. Because in Game 1, they tried to play Crowder on AD, and AD was just a barbecue chicken. He just completely feasted on Jay Crowder, Jimmy Butler, and the smaller players. So if you have a bigger player like Bam Adebayo on Anthony Davis, maybe that'll make it tougher for him, and he would maybe go out to the perimeter because you want AD to shoot threes rather than twos. Also,
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Sorry, go ahead, please.
go ahead, Mr. Kumar.
No, I mean, I kind of agree with you, but the problem, again, the challenge would be that, the Lakers would just keep switching, I mean, you would have a KCP or a Alex Caruso coming in and, trying to switch AD off of Bam Adebayo. And then, if they do that switch, then it's going to be difficult for somebody like Tyler Hero or Duncan Robinson or somebody like that to basically pick Anthony Davis. So, I mean, that's the huge challenge for, Miami Heat. I don't know, maybe they try out Myers Leonard, who's probably not seen any minutes at all. And, Coach Polstra needs to be innovative here because at the end of the day, if you let Anthony Davis switch off of the, shorter defense, it's game over. It's game over. He's going to score 40 points. And I wouldn't be really surprised if, actually Anthony Davis goes on to win the, NBA Finals MVP.
Oh, he's playing at an amazing level, Mr. Kumar. He's been the best player for the Lakers in this playoffs, which of course LeBron is playing a big factor in it, but Anthony Davis has been amazing in his first long playoff run. And so, I definitely agree with you. Should Kendrick Nunn play more minutes after his amazing run today, after Dragic went out? And thank you. That's transitioning me onto my next point. The Heat need to use their depth with, Kendrick Nunn, Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson. Those guys need to step up. Hero was not the hero for the Heat at all. He looked nervous. Yeah, and so is Duncan Robinson. So those guys need to step up because they've had more collective scoring than the Lakers, and I think they need to use that, to their advantage. And Mr. Kumar, in order to counteract the switching on the Lakers pick and roll, I think the Heat need a trap at the top of the key. If it's LeBron and Anthony Davis, I would trap LeBron, get the ball out of his hands, and then the perimeter players need to rotate to Anthony Davis and force him to kick it out to Kuzma, to Danny Green, to KCP, and just live with the result, Mr. Kumar. If they make their shots, just go to center court, shake their hand, and be like, congratulations. But I don't know if they can make more shots like they did in Game 1, but I would take that chance if I was the Heat, Mr. Kumar.
I would probably advise the same thing, but at the same time, if you look at the statistics against Boston for Miami, they pretty much had 4 players almost averaging 20 points. Bam Adebayo averaged almost 22 points. Dragic averaged 20.5. Hero averaged 19.2, and surprisingly, Butler only averaged 19 points. So it was more like a team effort. So you would want like 4 or 5 players from the Miami Heat to be averaging about 20 points if they need to win against the Lakers. Of course, defensively, as you said, maybe that zone defense and, let the Lakers, shoot from outside and take that chance because you know for a fact that the Lakers are not like consistently shooting higher percentage team.
Right.
So those are some of the things that probably that you can live with, because that's the risk that you have to take if the Miami Heat need to come back into this series. So it's going
Right.
to be a team effort, because this Heat has been a team effort right from the start of the season, and there's not been like one single hero or a Butler or Bam and Dragic. It's not a superstar team. Remind you that. I mean, it's been a collective effort, and this is probably one of those rare teams where you really don't have a big superstar, but at the same time they've been very consistent, especially since they entered the bubble.
Right, they have been consistent, and we were trying to compare this team to the 2004 Pistons team. And before I get to that point, when we ran an audience poll asking, are we still underestimating the Miami Heat? And Mr. Kumar, maybe after last night's game, people would say no, and I'm in the 41% that say no. I think the Heat have gotten the proper amount of respect in the playoffs for a deep playoff run. I've got Heat culture has been pounded into my brain, Mr. Kumar, and I think the Heat are getting the amount of respect for their playoff run.
Oh, well, but after today, that percentage is going to go really high, and lot more people are going to say that I don't think the Heat have any chance of coming back into the series. So, because frankly speaking, they didn't have any kind of energy as after that first 5 minutes.
Completely.
They played really well in that 5 minutes, but after then the rest 43 minutes, it was like sheer dominance from the Lakers.
And I think they kind of got, Mr. Kumar, I feel like they got demoralized a little bit because in the second quarter, or excuse me, in the first quarter, when the Heat were up by 13 points and they saw LeBron go to the bench, they were probably pumping their chest like, okay, LeBron's out. I think we can get this lead even more, maybe up to 20. But once they saw that Lakers second unit come back, they're like, well, if they can come back without LeBron, what's going to happen when he comes back on the floor? And I think the Heat need to be mentally focused, mentally sharp. I think Jimmy Butler, his post-game remarks, I liked what he said. It's just one game, but Heat need to have that approach. But Mr. Kumar, I've heard a lot of comparisons from this Heat team to the 2004 Pistons team that came out of nowhere and beat the Lakers. But the thing is, with that Pistons team, they had superstars, Ben Wallace, Rasheed Wallace, Rip Hamilton. The Heat team doesn't have any players onto that level. Jimmy Butler's a great player, but he's just average right now. He's not going to go into as one of the all-time greats. And I think Jimmy Butler had 23 points last night, and that was good, but they needed more collective scoring around them if they want to have a chance in this series.
Absolutely. And, it was such a great big gamble by Coach Vogel to actually sit out LeBron when they were down 13. As a coach, if I was a coach, I would be like, hey, you know what? My team is down 13. I need my superstar to come out and pretty much cover the lead. But I think it just worked out for Vogel, and now people are going to say that he's a great coach, and he has a great strategy, but let me tell you, I just think that he got plain lucky with that situation right there.
He did get a little lucky, but I think this has to go with the Lakers empowering the role players. LeBron's always been a pass first guy. AD, even though his main strength is scoring, I see him dish the ball out. He's not afraid. So I think they trust the role players, and I think they felt that energy and momentum that like, hey, if LeBron is out, we can still carry the load because we're still NBA players. And, KCP's had a solid career. Danny Green has had a solid career. So I think that empowerment allowed them to play well. And Vinod is saying, great going. So I appreciate the audience comment, and keep them coming, everybody. We enjoyed all the interaction and the engagement.
Absolutely. And, if Danny Green or Marcus Morris or, I think even Rajon Rondo had just shot a little bit better in that fourth quarter, maybe LeBron would have had his triple-double there.
Oh my God! I can tell you how many LeBron has had so many nice passes that just the teammates just miss shots. So he would have racked many more assists. That's for sure. But LeBron is just that kind of guy that he loves passing the ball, and that's what I appreciate the most about him. that he's not afraid to be able to put that trust in his teammates. And I think that was makes him such a great player and makes him off balance because Mr. Kumar, sometimes he comes into a game wanting to score, sometimes he comes into a game wanting to pass, and you don't know which LeBron you're going to get. So I think that keeps the defense on their heels.
Yeah, Soham, I wouldn't wish that AD gets injured in game two. Of course, I'm a big Laker fan, so I think
Knock
that's
on
not
wood.
happening. That's not happening, but I think the Heat have a bigger problem to solve, especially with the injuries to Dragic, to Bam Adebayo, as well as Jimmy Butler. I think the next 2 days, ice is going to be their best friend, and so let's hope
And
they come in
treatment.
fit because yeah. So Abhijit Singh, you know what? I really thought after tonight's game that I'm going to call a Lakers in four, but I'm just going to give a little respect to the Miami Heat. And you can see here in the audience, 82% saying that the Lakers are going to win the championship.
I definitely agree, Mr. Kumar. I think the Lakers are going to win in 5 games. I want to say 4, but I just feel like I have too much respect for Eric Spoelstra, Pat Riley, and the Miami Heat that they're going to get 1 game. It's going to be like the Nuggets series, where a game where like the Heat have their backs to the wall, whether it's game 2 or game 3, they're going to come out and win a game. But I still expect the Lakers completely dominate this series, and it does help, with the Dragic's injury. Jimmy Butler went down and bam. But Mr. Kumar, you can't use the injuries as an excuse because even before those injuries, Lakers were still dominating. So, and maybe it's a blessing in disguise for the Heat, Mr. Kumar, because maybe they'll go with Kendrick Nunn, who's a more athletic scorer than Goran Dragic. So maybe that might change the series, Kendrick Nunn, because he
So
came in second,
yeah,
Mr. Kumar, in Rookie of the Year voting. So he's not a scrub at all.
yeah. I mean, actually, I think it's a very transitional story for Kendrick Nunn because during the regular season or before the pandemic hit, actually Kendrick Nunn was in the starting 5 lineup,
Yeah,
and not Goran Dragic used to come off the bench. But I
right.
think then he got tested, COVID positive, and then
Mhm.
of course after that, he left the bubble, and then he came back, and then after that, I mean, his game wasn't the same. And then of course Goran Dragic, he's been playing really well over in this postseason. So it's just a matter of trust that he needs to build with Coach Spoelstra. But I mean,
Yeah.
but let's hope. I mean, as Abhijit said, I mean it's Lakers in 4. I think last night I picked the Lakers in 6, and then after watching
Same.
tonight's game, I changed my opinion and said Lakers in 5. So that's
I'm
the
the
story.
same way.
That's how the story goes. So I think
Exactly. No, yeah, we did. Now we changed our picks to the Lakers in 5 after watching last night's game. And Mr. Kumar, Hero is going to have to be a superhero and have magical powers if the Heat want any chance to come back, and win the series or make the series competitive. And I just wanted to touch on Kendrick Nunn. I have to give the young man credit because he stayed ready. He could have easily sulked, like you said, that he was in the starting lineup all season, and then not playing as much in the bubble due to COVID. But I think he stayed ready, stayed mentally focused, and he can bring a lot to this Heat team. He's a good playmaker, good scorer. He can play good defense. So I think he has the intangibles to be able to make a difference on this Heat team, and he's going to need to, Mr. Kumar. There's some pressure. I think he set the bar a little bit high for himself because didn't he have 18 points, Mr. Kumar, in complete garbage time? So he's going to have to play that same way if they want any chance.
so. Yeah, let's I think move on to our storylines, and I think let's start with the first storyline. I think the most surprising move. It's been 2 weeks since the Clippers choked in that second round against Denver Nuggets, and Steve Ballmer ended up firing Coach Doc Rivers. And I mean, it was really surprising for me. The reason because is that I didn't expect Doc Rivers to get fired. He's still one of the best coaches, in the association, and it just pains me that he had to be the scapegoat for the Clippers' loss against the Denver Nuggets.
And he was a scapegoat, exactly. And at the end of the season, I read some reports that Steve Ballmer met with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, and they didn't really advocate for Doc Rivers to come back because if they wanted to vouch for him, he would have been back next season as Clipper head coach. And Steve Ballmer was just very disappointed at the Clippers, falling short of not just the finals, but the conference finals. And he felt like somebody had to go. And like you said, sadly, as a coach, you can't fire the players, Mr. Kumar. And they gave a heaven and earth to get Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. But yeah, Doc Rivers ended up, getting let go as the Clippers head coach. I believe that he lost the locker room, Mr. Kumar, with all the load management. I think he gave too much power to the players. He didn't really have that much control over the team. You heard throughout the season that there was some, bickering, with Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell about the preferential treatment that the Clippers were giving the superstars and, in regards to loads management. So I think the whole team chemistry was, jacked up already. And I think that Doc Rivers didn't do a good enough job as a leader to get control of that locker room. And that cost him his job.
Yeah, but at the same time, if you just look at those games 5, 6, and 7, Clippers went into the second half. I think the first game they had like a 14-point lead. They had a 16-point lead in game 6 and a 12-point lead in game 7. It's down to the players to just get it done. They didn't execute what they had to do. It's a matter of like maybe Leonard or Paul George or Lou Williams or Montrezl Harrell just having a little bit of a better game. So can you really blame the coach for the players really not performing? Basically not performing in a way that they shot bricks. They pretty much Paul George was hitting the sideboard. Kawhi Leonard just lost his mid-range game. Lou Williams was just horrible in defense.
Lemon pepper Lou.
So I do understand that Coach Doc Rivers hasn't really proven himself even in those 7 years since he's been in the LA Clippers, because he also had a chance to get in conference finals with Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, and DeAndre Jordan. Again, he lost that 3-1 lead against the Houston Rockets. And then, of course, another 3-1 loss against the Denver Nuggets. But I think Steve Ballmer had made his mind. It didn't matter if Paul George or Kawhi Leonard had anything to say or defend defend Coach Doc Rivers. But at the end of the day, I'm not too worried, because Coach Doc Rivers is going to get a job somewhere in this association, because he's just too good of a coach not to be coaching. And we just ask the people if Clippers would be good or bad without Doc Rivers. And surprisingly, actually, 54% say that, the team would be better without Coach Doc Rivers.
I think they are going to be better, because I think they're not going to have a load management strategy. And Doc Rivers did let Kawhi Leonard and Paul George get away with a lot. Maybe after a practice the next day, Kawhi was like, "Oh, Doc, I don't feel like practicing." And Doc was like, "Okay, Kawhi, don't worry about it. You guys don't need to practice. We got this." I think he was too reliant on the talent and, trying to figure it out later, but that never came. And their conditioning really fell through, because these players weren't used to playing 40 minutes. I heard that in the Nuggets game, they were asking to come out of the game in like 3 to 5 minute spurts. Like, come on, your season's on the line. And I think that was due to a lack of conditioning. And I think that you have to hold, the coach accountable, for that. So I think that Doc Rivers, I think he's going to learn a lot, from this experience with the Clippers. And I think the Clippers going forward are not going to allow load management as much to happen. But it wasn't just load management, Mr. Kumar. I think Doc Rivers didn't make the necessary adjustments when they had the lead against the Nuggets. He looked like on the sideline, he always looked stressed out. He would just sit back like he was at the beach. Like he was like, "Oh, we're going to figure this out. We got Kawhi Leonard and Paul George." But you can't. As a coach, you have to make the necessary adjustments to be able to make your team successful. So it does fall on the players, but also Doc Rivers does bear some blame for the Clippers falling short.
Oh, no, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that it's a collective blame game here. I think each one had their role. Of course, the coach is considered the leader, but I think as Soham is mentioning, I think we were just going to get to our next point is in terms of where do you think Coach Doc Rivers is going to go? I mean, there are like 6 or 7 open spots for coaching. I think one of them got filled in Chicago, where Billy Donovan just got hired as the coach there. So, I mean, in my opinion, I think the best job would be probably the Philly job.
For me, Mr. Kumar, I think Mike D'Antoni is going to get the Philly job because it seems like they really like him. I think Doc Rivers should go to the New Orleans Pelicans because he seems like a coach now in his career that I don't think he can lead a championship team. You know, you saw it with the Clippers with Chris Paul and Blake Griffin, and then these Clippers with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. I think he needs to be on a team that's trying to develop their young players and try to get in the playoffs, but not be expected to advance far in the playoffs. And I think Doc Rivers would be a great mentor and great coach for a player like Zion Williamson and a young New Orleans Pelicans team. He would be a great mentor and leader for them. So I like the fit with New Orleans Pelicans a little bit better than I like with the Philadelphia 76ers with 2 established superstars already with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. Because you saw how that worked with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, Mr. Kumar. I think it's going to be the same repeat of what happened with the Clippers if Doc Rivers goes to the Sixers.
Well, I mean, the reason I'm choosing the 76ers is because I personally don't think that Coach Doc Rivers is a coach who is with a development mentality. I think the only time he was with some developing players and stuff was when he was coaching in Orlando Magic. And then when he moved to Boston, he had a plethora of superstars like Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, Rajon Rondo himself. He won a championship there. Then he moved to the LA Clippers again. They were expected to do bigger things because they had superstars like, Chris Paul, DeAndre Jordan, and Blake Griffin. And then again, the second phase of the Clippers now last year with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. So I know that, you like him in New Orleans because, I think it's an up and coming team and probably they have a very good chance of coming into the playoffs next season with Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, Drew Holiday. And of course, I wouldn't want to mention Lonzo Ball, but still, I got to mention him. But at the same time, so I think it'll be a huge shift in mentality for a coach like Doc Rivers. And we don't know if he is ready for that kind of a process because, it's going to be a couple, at least 2 or 3 years for this team to fully develop into a contender in the West.
And I think Mr. Kumar, he's been coaching nonstop since the early 2000s. I think he's a little burned out. I think, he may need a little break. And what better place to go than the New Orleans Pelicans, where they don't really have any established superstars. So he wouldn't have to deal with the egos like Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. And I think that'll be nice for him. He can be able to coach up these guys. They'll listen to him. They'll respect him. And I think he needs that, for this at this point in his career, rather than going to a team, like I said, with already established superstars, guys with big egos thinking they're better than they are. Nobody on the Pelicans should have an ego because they're not superstars. So I think that would be a nice little transition from the Clippers job if he goes to the New Orleans Pelicans.
Okay, but I think the next question would be who do you think would be a better candidate for the LA Clippers? Once again, there are a lot of coaches available in the market, and of course, two of the favorite candidates would be probably Ty Lue and Sam Cassell, who were assistant coaches with the LA Clippers.
Yeah, I think I would go with Ty Lue. I think he would be a great fit for them because he's been already in their system for a year now, being an assistant coach. He's coached championship players with Kyrie Irving and LeBron James to win a championship in 2016. So he'll be able to manage the egos. I think he's a coach that players respect. I think he'll hold the players accountable, and I think he'll be a great voice for the locker room lastly. So I think Ty Lue would be a great coach to replace Doc Rivers for the LA Clippers.
Yeah, I would also feel so because he's already into the system. He already knows the system. He already knows the players. It will also depend on, what the personnel situation is going to be with Montrezl Harrell and, the others. But I also feel like maybe Mike D'Antoni could be a good choice because
Ooh.
Mike D'Antoni is, an offensive minded coach, and he likes, the team to be really quick, especially like the one in, Phoenix. And I just feel the constitution of the team is also very similar to what they had in Phoenix, especially with Steve Nash and Amaris Stoudemire, Sean Marion, and the others. So this could be. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there, but in all likelihood, it could be Tyronn Lue or Sam Cassell because Sam Cassell has also been with the LA Clippers for much longer than Tyronn Lue.
Yeah, he has. But regarding Mike D'Antoni, I think that's a very interesting proposition, Mr. Kumar. But if they did bring in Mike D'Antoni, I feel like they need a point guard. That's something that the Clippers lack this season. I think they're going to need to bring in a point guard that can set up the offense, get everybody organized, that can still score. But I think the Clippers would be a heavily offensive team with Mike D'Antoni, and they would lose their defensive edge that made them so good this year at times. So Clippers will be a more heavily offensive focused team. But I think Mike D'Antoni will be able to get along well with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George because players love playing for Mike D'Antoni because, like you said, in their system, they produce stats, they produce points, they also produce MVPs. So I think that would be a very Kawhi Leonard friendly offense if Mike D'Antoni is to become the next coach of the Los Angeles Clippers. But Mr. Kumar, my question is to you: do the Clippers really want to start over? Do they want to start from scratch and bring in someone from the outside, or rather bring someone on the inside like Sam Cassell and Tyronn Lue?
See, I mean, it's a very difficult question that you're asking because it all boils down to what's going to happen with Paul George, what's going to happen with Montrezl Harrell. Montrezl Harrell is a free agent. Are people going to, is T-Bomber also going to blame Paul George for what happened this season? Or whether they're just going to think that this was just a bubble situation. Not many of the players in the Clippers roster wanted to come and be in the bubble, and they all voted for like probably not playing in the bubble. So I think the players have to answer a lot of questions, and at the same time, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard have just 1 year remaining, and they can opt out of their contract next season. So
Yeah.
It's going to be a very difficult choice for somebody like a Steve Ballmer. I think, of course, Jerry West, who is a consultant there, would probably be, better a better person to manage that situation there.
Yeah, there's a lot of difficult questions that the Clippers are going to answer, and a lot of changes in personnel. We're going to see what's going to happen, Mr. Kumar. A lot of questions coming for the Clippers this offseason. But now moving on to my favorite topic, I've been waiting for this: the GOAT conversation. LeBron versus Michael Jordan. So, Mr. Kumar, I got to ask you: if LeBron wins his 4th championship this year, does that make him the GOAT, and does he pass the great Michael Jordan?
And the answer is this: that's me crowning myself. So 75% of the people actually say yes. And, in my opinion, well, I think people would hammer me for it, but I already think he is at GOAT level. He's done enough to prove himself. I know, but every time you come up with this conversation, people are going to say it's the 6 rings. Ultimately, it all boils down to the rings. But I would just say that if it boils down to the rings, I think Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had also 6 rings. Bill Russell has 11 rings. So should they be considered as the GOAT rather than Michael Jordan?
That's a very interesting question. I think they are. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I would rank him in my top 3 for NBA of all-time players because he's definitely up there. And you can make an argument for, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You can make an argument for Michael Jordan. But for me, I think it is Michael Jordan. Because first of all, he's 6-0 in the finals with 6 MVPs. He has 5 MVPs, regular season MVPs, 14 All-Star appearances, 9 all-defensive selections, 10 scoring titles. averaged 30 points per game in his career. He is still the GOAT. But Mr. Kumar, I'll give you this. I think LeBron James is narrowing the gap, and he has been for years, especially if he continues to win more championships and continues to rack up more finals MVPs.
I know. I think this argument can go on for like 2 more episodes, and we wouldn't want to do that. But at the same time, yeah, I would too. But I don't think the audience would be like tuning in for like 4 hours straight. But the reason I say is that, of course, it's all about longevity. And LeBron. I don't know if people know this, but this is LeBron's 10th final. And only 4 other people have been to double-digit finals. And Bill Russell is, 12 finals. Sam Jones has, I think, 11. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has 10. And, once again, it's LeBron at 10. He's pretty much dominated this decade, right? From 2011 to 2020. In 10 years, this is his 9th final. We never know what would have happened if he hadn't got injured last season, but that's a whole different argument that we can have. But at the same time, he's been to 10 finals in 9 finals in 10 years, and 3 different teams, 5 different coaches, and he's, let me tell you, a couple of seasons, he's had like really bad teams, especially in Cleveland. The first time he had, Ilgauskas and Mo Williams, and, those are the superstars alongside him. Then, in 2018, he had Jordan Clarkson, George Hill,
Larry Nance,
Larry Nance Jr. So he can really carry the team. And of course, you got to give it to Michael Jordan as well. He's been to 6 finals. He's 6-0 in the finals. I think he dominates the game in a lot of statistics, but at the same time, there's close competition in terms of, I think LeBron James is going to beat a lot of statistics, statistical records in the NBA. I'm sure he's going to be probably the top in points pretty soon, maybe a couple of seasons. But as Bhushan Suryavanshi is saying, Michael Jordan, second is Kobe Bryant, and third, LeBron James. For me, it's LeBron James, then Michael Jordan.
And I think I would flip it, Mr. Kumar. I think it's Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But Bhushan, I would definitely put Kobe in my top 5. I don't think he's top 3, but he's definitely in the top 5, for me. But Mr. Kumar, LeBron is going to get all those records because of his longevity. And that's a credit to him because Michael Jordan, as you know, he smoked cigars. He gambled a lot, as you saw in the Last Dance. He didn't have the best habits off the court, and he didn't take care of his body like LeBron James did. But Mr. Kumar, Michael Jordan has done something that LeBron James never did. He three-peated twice, Mr. Kumar. And some of the teams that he beat in those three-peat, he beat Magic Johnson. He beat Gary Payton, John Stockton, Karl Malone. Those are all-time greats. So he's beaten the top teams to win championships. And his best player, Mr. Kumar, I don't think he's had a player that is better than Anthony Davis. Scottie Pippen was great, but he's not on the level of Anthony Davis. So it was just basically Michael Jordan or bust. He didn't have the Robin like LeBron has now with Anthony Davis.
I like the fact that you're bringing up Anthony Davis, because that means you're saying that he's going to win a title this year, which is confirmed. And,
yeah,
that's good. Yeah, that's good news for LeBron James. But Malam, come on. It's a tough situation there. So I think we just got to leave it at that. Each one to his own. I'm going to fight for LeBron, 365, 24/7. Probably you're going to fight for Michael Jordan. But at the same time, I feel he's definitely there in the Mount Rushmore of basketball.
He's on the Mount Rushmore for sure. There's no denying that. Yeah, he's the second greatest player. If he retired right now, Mr. Kumar, he doesn't need to do any more. He's cemented himself as the second greatest player of all time and on Mount Rushmore.
But what happens if he loses this series in the finals?
Oh man, then he'll be 3-7 and losing to a Heat team without a superstar, Mr. Kumar. That wouldn't be a good look for LeBron, at all. But I don't think you need to
Eh,
worry about that, Mr. Kumar. You can sleep well at night knowing that the Lakers are going to win.
Well, I think so too. He has proven himself, that he can perform at the highest level. Uh, and
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be a huge setback for him if he loses this finals. But it will be considered a huge, huge upset in terms of his career because he's already acknowledged the fact that losing that series in 2011 against the Dallas Mavericks, that's one of the biggest setbacks that he's ever had, and this would be probably counted as number one, and then the Dallas series.
Yeah, it does. But I have to give him credit, Mr. Kumar, that he's come back from that Dallas area. He embraced it. He knows he knew what he had to do, and he's come back really strong and really dominated. His greatest achievement, Mr. Kumar, is beating that Warriors team in 2016. And I'll give you this: as great a team as Michael Jordan has played, the Warriors have to be one of the greatest teams of all time in NBA history, and he's come back from a 3-1 deficit. Even though I have to say that Michael Jordan never went to a Game 7 in the finals because he never had to, but I digress.
Okay, so LeBron for me and Jordan for you. So the score is 1-1. Anyway, I think we got to move on to our next section because I think we are almost about to wrap up our show, and that is the spiciest section on YouTube, the Patel and Kumar NBA talk show, Indian Tadka. So welcome back everyone to the Indian Tadka. Let's pour some oil, let's pour some mustard seeds, let's pour some spices and make this really nice and hot. And what we're going to discuss today in the Indian Tadka section is who has been the most impactful NBA player in India. And of course, the choices were Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, and Steph Curry. And an overwhelming favorite is Michael Jordan at 358 votes, but a close second is Kobe Bryant, and I'm not really surprised there.
Yeah, I feel like Mr. Kumar that the superstar that has the most impact on India has to be either LeBron James or Kobe Bryant because they've connected well with the audience, their presence off the court, all the philanthropic stuff that they've been doing, their connection to the young players. And I feel like the Indian audience really wants to emulate and enjoy their style of play. I think they can relate to their style of play and that the way of the competitive spirit. So I think it definitely has to be LeBron James or Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, of course, a lot of people in during the lockdown, of course, must have seen The Last Dance, and of course, got carried away because it was one of the biggest advertisement on Netflix about Michael Jordan. But yeah, I mean, I'm just kidding. It was a great show, great documentary. Of course, you got to see the inside stuff from that last season. But so that I mean that I'm a little bit surprised, of course, is because of course Michael Jordan during Michael Jordan's three-peats, both times, of course NBA wasn't shown on live TV,
Yeah.
in India, and of course Kobe. I mean during Kobe Bryant's peak, you had those games coming live on TV, so people got to watch more NBA games, and of course now with LeBron coming in, you have the NBA League Pass, and you have games coming live, on Sports Network and stuff like that. So yeah, so that's one of the key reasons. But I think the audience is pretty right. I think a lot of people will definitely put Michael Jordan number one. Kobe Bryant is number two so far, and maybe LeBron catches up with him.
I think by the time his career ends, Mr. Kumar, that LeBron James might even surpass Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant of being the most popular player in India, because the fans, they love LeBron James. There are a lot of hardcore fans. I think they just love the way that he plays, and there's a lot of Lakers fans in India. So I think that by the time LeBron's done, I wouldn't be surprised if he surpasses those guys as the most popular player in India. And we'll see what happens, Mr. Kumar.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ravindran Nair. Thank you for tuning into the show.
Thank you.
And
Thank you very much.
thank you for your good wishes. I also request others who are watching, please tune in to our show. You can, of course, chat with us. Well, I mean, we are hoping. I think whole India is waiting, hopefully, to see LeBron come to India for the NBA India games. But I think we'll have another discussion with that. But we also voted in terms of who would you like to meet if face to face? So we had, of course, Deepika Padukone, we had Sachin Tendulkar there, Shah Rukh Khan, Virat Kohli, Narendra Modi. But an overwhelming favorite is, with 725 votes, is LeBron James.
And if I had to meet one person in the U.S., Mr. Kumar, no matter sports or non-sports person, I would have to be LeBron James, because he's just been a global icon. I basically grew up watching him play, just really appreciate his game and the kind of person that he is and how dominant he's been. So it definitely has to be LeBron James. But as far as an Indian athlete, it'd have to be Sachin Tendulkar, because he's the GOAT of cricket. I've watched some of his games, growing up. I just really appreciate, his style of play also, and he's the greatest cricket player of all time. So who wouldn't want to meet the GOAT, Mr. Kumar?
For me, it's LeBron James, and number two would have been Sachin Tendulkar as well, because once again, sports, and of course, being Indian, I mean, there has to be a little bit of cricket in me, right? But actually, 37 people actually voted for Deepika Padukone, and I feel all those 37 people are working for the the Narcotics Bureau or something.
Oh man, shots fired, Mr. Kumar. You're not holding back. Oh, that's too good. That's too good.
I think we also had a audience poll in terms of what would be LeBron James' name if he was in India, and what would be his last name. We had the choice of, I think, Joseph, Janardhan, Jane, others, and I think we were contemplating in terms of what would it be. But before that, I think we will also tune in. Who do you like better, Lakers Braun, Cavs Braun, Heat Braun?
For me, Mr. Kumar, it has to be the Cavs Braun, because first of all, Ohio is his hometown, having growing up in Akron, and he brought Cleveland the first championship in like over 50 years. So I think that was just a very iconic moment, and he literally carried those teams and brought the Cavs to victory, because as you said earlier, he really didn't have, that much of a supporting cast besides Kyrie Irving. And I think the impact that LeBron James has had in the Cleveland community and in the Ohio community, I think it's just impactful, and it's very significant. So I think there has to be the Cleveland Cavaliers, LeBron James, just how utterly dominant that he was.
Absolutely. I also feel it's Cavs Braun, because I was in Ohio when he got drafted, in Cleveland, right out of high school in 2003. And of course, I naturally became a Cleveland Cavaliers fan, but I was a even bigger, LeBron fan. So I had to support the Miami Heat, when he made that decision to go to Miami. But I was just super elated when he came back to the Cavaliers and he won a title there, especially for the state of Ohio, because as you know, the state of, Ohio sports teams really have this jinx with the Cleveland Indians, the Bengals, and the Browns, who have never won a title. So coming back from that, 3-1 deficit, beating the Golden State Warriors, and bringing that trophy to Ohio, that was a key point for me.
It definitely was, and that championship is going to carry a lot more significance than any of the championships he won with the Heat, any of the championships that he's going to win with the Lakers, because he didn't have another superstar. Kyrie Irving was good, but you saw how much problems he was in the locker room, and LeBron was able to navigate that. He didn't have the best relationship with Dan Gilbert either, but he still was able to bring an NBA championship, to the city of Cleveland and to the state of Ohio. And our last audience question was, if LeBron had an Indian surname, what would it be? And it seems like 24% say is Janardhan. Mr. Kumar, what do you think?
I chose Janardhan myself, but I do have a very interesting story, especially with LeBron and stuff. This was in 2015 when it was just right after the NBA Finals. They lost for the first time against the Golden State Warriors, and my wife was expecting our first child then, and I actually discussed this with her that can we name our child Lebraman Muthukumar if we have a son? And of course, I was, pretty much vetoed for that suggestion. And, she said, you know what? Yeah, I'm never going to talk to you again if you name him Lebraman. But I really thought if I had a son, I would have named him like, XYZ, and the middle name would have been Lebraman Muthukumar, something like that. I mean, I don't know. That would be funny, right?
Oh man, that is too funny, Mr. Kumar. That's awesome. That just shows your love for LeBron, and that's awesome. And your daughter, I bet, watches LeBron James just as much as you do, and is going to be as much of a fan, going forward. And it seems like if LeBron James wins the championship, they would be doing a Bhangra dance in the middle of the court with the championship trophy, Mr. Kumar, and you will be doing a Bhangra dance on the streets of Mumbai at the parade.
Did you not see? I was there in that crowd there. I was doing the Bhangra. But I'll be doing Bhangra in the streets of Mumbai if LeBron wins,
I just need you to record yourself and put that out there. You're going to go viral, Mr. Kumar. And Dwight Howard saying, I want to come back to India. He had the best time ever. So Dwight Howard, you should definitely come back to India. The Indian audience would embrace you and will definitely want you back. But you should definitely bring LeBron as your +1 if you're going to come back, Mr. Kumar.
Absolutely. I mean, I think Dwight Howard will be the +1 to LeBron James.
Oh, man. But Mr. Kumar, he's going to be looking good after that championship trophy. So he's going to be putting his chest out. But it's well-deserved for Dwight Howard. He's had a stellar career. It'll be a great way to end,
Absolutely. I mean, he came in the finals in Orlando when he was playing for Orlando, of course. So I think the world has turned upside down. He was considered to be a problem child, but all of a sudden he's just totally different. So anyway, I request everybody connect with us on Twitter and Instagram at Patel and Kumar. And of course subscribe to our channel on at Ekalavyas YouTube channel. And of course we have our podcast, the Patel and Kumar podcast on Spotify, on subscribe to the Patel Pick and Roll Sports YouTube channel as well, where you could see the show. So I mean, too many mediums, and we just want to come be the best to our viewers. So, but Mr. Patel, go and announce our special episode for the October 15th.
So yes, everybody, please be sure to tune in. We got a special episode on October 15th. And Grizzlies head coach Taylor Jenkins and Indian assistant coach of the Memphis Grizzlies, Sonia Rodman, first ever Indian assistant coach in the NBA. They're both going to be with us live on October 15th. Set your reminders and be sure to be there. And we can't wait. That's going to be a very special episode, and it's going to be very exciting. So be sure to not miss that special edition episode.
Yeah. So once again, tune into the channels, Patel Pick and Roll Sports YouTube channel, as well as the Ekalavyas YouTube channel. Subscribe, set a reminder, especially for October 15th, because we have a fantastic show planned for you. But, right now we don't, that's the only time we have for tonight. We got to wrap up the show. So thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. Please keep tuning back. We'll be again live, next Thursday at 7 p.m. And of course, if we have a game 7 in between the 8th and the 15th, we're going to be live to you once again immediately, after the finals, 7 p.m. again. We'll keep you posted on that. So once again, thank you, Mr. Patel. Wonderful to chat with you. I think I'm gonna miss you after October 15th.
Oh man, Mr. Kumar, I'm definitely going to miss you too, and I'm going to miss the audience. Thank you again for everybody for tuning in and all the engagement. We love it, and thank you for all the support in this first season of the Patel and Kumar Show. And be sure to catch us every Thursday, 7 p.m. India time. And just like Mr. Kumar said, as soon as after the NBA Finals is over, we'll be back the next day, giving a little preview or a post game episode of what happened in the NBA Finals. But till then, see you later. Peace out.
Sayonara.
Michael Jordan! Michael Jordan! Michael Jordan's the GOAT!